Hello and welcome to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherry Davidoff. I'm the founder of LMG Security.
And I'm Matt Duran. I'm the director of training here at LMG Security.
And today we're going to talk about two big stories. One of them is that the FTC hit General Motors with an order because they were secretly collecting information about drivers' habits and then selling them to consumer reporting agencies, which in turn that data was being purchased by insurance companies and then used to potentially raise your insurance rates or even deny you insurance.
Yeah.
So pretty bad. And we're going to dig into that. And then we're also going to dig into a couple of other related stories that just came out.
Yeah. I think we've got a lot of information on data privacy and how your data is actually used without your knowledge, which is really interesting to a lot of people.
And this is more than a personal privacy issue. This is also a security issue for all kinds of organizations. Because one of the big trends, and we're going to talk about this in our webinar coming up as well, top trends of 2026. But one of the big trends from the past year or two is that hackers are using stolen personal information to do things like bypassing authentication, or in the case of like North Korean deepfake workers, they're stealing identities and then applying for jobs and worming their way into your organization. So the more personal data gets collected and stockpiled, the higher the risk is for you personally and for any organizations that you are trying to secure.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump in. You want to talk a little bit about General Motors
and
what data they got and what they did with it?
Let's talk about General Motors. So this happened on January 16th. The FTC levied their order that said, and it was kind of a surprising headline. It said, GM's no longer allowed to collect data for 5 years.
Yes. That's right.
And that caught my attention because, first off, what data are they collecting?
They were collecting precise geolocation information, like wherever you were driving every 3 seconds.
Every 3 seconds.
I'm a little mad about this, but I was also suspicious enough of OnStar that I didn't activate it in any car that I was in. But yeah, every 3 seconds. And they were marketing this tool as, I think it was called Smart Driver, and saying that it would help you. It was a self-assessment.
Yeah, it was your personal driving assessment tool to help you be a better driver on the road.
But it was also snitching on you to insurance companies and Lord knows who else.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. And as it turned out, they were pipelining this information out to consumer reporting agencies, insurance companies. I mean, this could show up in something like a background check. Your driving habits might come into play, or it might go out to a marketing firm or something.
Credit
like that.
checks. You have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the issues that we're seeing right now is that we really don't have a lot of visibility into where your information goes once it's collected.
Right.
But in this case, they certainly didn't have the right to do that. So the FTC gave them not just this 5-year ban on sharing geolocation and driver behavior data, they also hit them with a 20-year order. And I think this order is fascinating. It requires affirmative express consent, access, deletion rights, opt-out mechanisms, and the ability to disable precise geolocation. Things that I think a lot of people expect to already have and are already in place in Europe and places like that.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about Europe when we get a little bit farther into it. But yeah, the idea here is that they're going to make this more of a proactive control. If you want this service, you have to explicitly tell GM, yes, I want this service, instead of them having it turned on by default and you missing the checkbox on the contract where it says, I'd like to not be tracked. Or
I feel like
that.
GM is now going to be offering the most private cars in the United States, except for ones that aren't smart cars.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Okay, so the impact of all this, of course, was that insurance pricing and coverage decisions may have been influenced by this. But now we're seeing connected vehicles like GM's are being treated as connected data platforms that can be regulated. They're not just like neutral hardware. So that's kind of an interesting development that this is in the crosshairs of regulators' actions right now.
Well, and I mean, this has been a concern for quite a while now. In fact, I mean, if we just go back a year, there was that big lawsuit that was filed by the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton against Allstate for doing basically the same thing that GM was doing. They were a little sneakier about it, but they were basically collecting that same kind of data and using it for those same purposes. I mean, this was used to make financial decisions from the insurance company's perspective to minimize their risk and maximize their profits based on driving habits that people didn't know they were giving to them.
Yeah, I think one thing that made the Allstate one so egregious was they weren't collecting it from an app that was produced by the insurer.
Right, yeah.
Or from a car or anything like that. It was from other apps, right? Like what kind of apps were they collecting your location data from?
Yeah, so there are a lot of apps that have become really popular lately, like Gas Buddy is one of them that tracks your
right?
Life 360, where you can track your kids and family and things like that. And it tracks you when you're in the car, it tells you how fast you're going. I've seen the application. I mean, it's There's a lot of data points that it collects
Well,
about
I'm
you.
sure parents want to see their kids' speed, and they probably don't
Yeah.
realize that that information is going maybe to an insurance company.
It was, and Allstate had a subsidiary company called Arity that was creating these software development kits that they were sneaking into these applications. And without people's knowledge, they were pipelining all of that data right back to Allstate. So if you had
Wow.
Life360, even if you weren't an Allstate customer, they were getting information about your driving. And because you have to register those applications, they had your name, they had your email, they had everything they needed to identify you. So, 5 years down the road, if you do apply, they can say, wow, you speed a lot. Your premiums are going to be way higher. Or we're just going to deny you coverage because we don't like your driving habits or
This is
something
like
like
a
that.
data backdoor.
It really is.
Did those apps know, like the people who were
Oh, I'm
pushing
sure.
out those apps?
Yeah, I'm sure the
Okay,
people
just
who
checking.
made the applications knew that SDK was going in there. But I mean, when you look at like the end user license agreement for an application,
Yeah.
even if it's a simple one like Gas Buddy, which just gets you like a discount on gasoline, I mean, the EULA on those things is massive, and it's all in legalese. And most people, as we know, don't read them. So they have no idea that their data is being harvested. They have no idea it's being provided to third parties, and it's not that there's an effort to hide it or anything like that. I mean, it's in the EULA, but nobody reads those things, and so
Right.
people were just volunteering this information without realizing it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that affected about 45 million Americans, by the way.
That was the estimate. Yeah.
There was another case that just came up here at the beginning of 2026, and that is the California data broker enforcement.
Oh yeah.
Now,
I like
this
this one.
is a huge leap forward when it comes to privacy regulation in the United States. And it's going to be very impactful for all kinds of organizations. And I think ultimately it could reduce our systemic risk. But in the short term, it could be difficult for organizations to comply with.
Right.
So to summarize this, California has already passed a law, the California Delete Act. That was passed last year, SB 362, and we can link to that in the show notes.
Yep.
The enforcing agency is the California Privacy Protection Agency, Cal Privacy is what they're commonly called. And they've established the DROP program. What does DROP stand for? Like delete
request opt-out platform. Yep.
Yeah. So you can, if you're a California resident, and man, did this make me wish I was a California resident, you can go onto their website, and if you qualify, you can put your information in there and request to be deleted from data brokers' databases. And in order to make that happen, data brokers themselves need to register.
Yeah. That was the big thing that caught our attention about this one. We saw a headline that said California had fined a data broker for basically illegally selling data of California residents. And that
$45 million.
Yeah, $45,000.
Oh, 45,000. Thank you.
45,000.
Yeah, they fined data masters $45,000. So
Right.
little slap on the wrist. But I think what wasn't a slap on the wrist was that they are also banned from selling information of California residents.
Yeah, so Data Masters is a Texas-based company, and they originally told California that they didn't have any data on people from California, but once they were provided with proof, they came back and said, oh, oopsie, we missed that. It turns out that they're no longer allowed by law to sell that data. And if they do, as a purchase of a larger data set, get data for someone from California, they have to delete it from their system within 24 hours. So there's there's a hard deadline for them.
24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours. So
okay, so they really have to get on that purging process.
That causes problems because I mean, when they're buying data sets, you guys have to remember these are millions of records that they're purchasing at a time. I mean, they are giant sets of data on people, and to then have to go through and prune that data, there's labor to go ahead and do that. So this is going to hit people further down the road.
And it's also going to hit any organization out there, maybe some of you that function as data brokers. Even if you don't see yourself as a data broker, check out the definition in the California law.
Yeah, they updated it.
If you are collecting, that's right, if you're collecting or selling information about people you don't have a direct relationship, you may qualify as a data broker. So check that out.
Yep.
It does not apply to people that you have that direct business relationship with. There is an enforcement deadline starting August 1st, 2026. Anyone who counts as a data broker does need to honor those drop requests. That is coming up.
I think it's amazing. And it like the language behind this law, it really tends to mirror, and I said we talk about this, but it really tends to mirror a lot of the new regulations that have been put in place over the last few years in like the European Union, like the right to be forgotten. which I think is a huge step forward. And what it really does is try to classify privacy as more of a proactive security control.
It
They
really
expect privacy
is.
by default at this point.
I did a panel, I think it was a year or two ago, with a colleague of mine, Winston Crone, who is based in the UK.
Mhm.
And we were talking about these huge data breaches that have been coming out in the news. And he pointed out they don't really see those giant mega breaches in the EU.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't have these giant, endless stockpiles of data
Yeah, the
there.
data's not there to be stolen.
Yeah, they have much stricter retention requirements. They have to inventory what they have. They have the right to be forgotten, which means you kind of have to be very organized so that if a consumer or a person requests that their data be deleted, you can actually accomplish that.
Yeah.
And we don't really have that infrastructure in the United States yet.
Not really. And we also have a lot of organizations who really do like to hoard and stockpile data. Like we saw with the National Public Data Breach as an example.
Yes,
We've talked
like
about
your
this
favorite
before.
data breach.
It is because
I
it's
think
like
really boring.
it's massive though. It was billions of records that were hijacked, and when they opened up sites where you could go and check your information, you could see how far back they were holding that. I mean, there was information like I was in that breach.
Oh my God,
And
how many times can our social security numbers get stolen? I don't care anymore.
Oh man, I care.
Okay.
I'd prefer it to not ever get stolen again. I know it's been stolen a few times, but that's not the point. The point was they had information on me from like 15 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, they're just hanging on to this data, and a lot of organizations have that same problem, holding on to data for way, way longer than you need to and keeping just way too much of it.
Okay, so you guys, this is really key for 2026. Data is hazardous material.
Mhm.
It's just like nuclear waste. And not waste, it's like nuclear material. And the more data you collect, the more powerful it is, but also the more damage can be caused if it's leaked or if it's misused. And so any organization that collects information should be aware that when you collect data, you are collecting risk. You're basically stockpiling risk. And that means that systemically, we have accumulated a ton of risk, especially in the United States, where we really don't have strong regulation
Right.
regarding data storage and retention.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of I've had discussions with multiple different clients when we're talking about things like email security.
Yeah.
It's just an example.
Oh, boy.
And they have zero retention period on their email. They have emails from 15 years ago that
That's
they're still
many of the
hoarding.
people out here.
It
Okay,
is, yeah.
so if we tell you, you should have a retention limit on your email and purge after a year and a half, like I swear, probably half of you guys just had a little mini heart attack
Right.
there, right?
Yeah,
But it's
and
okay.
it's
We've
scary.
got to learn to let go. It's like cleaning out your garage. Like sometimes you just got to do it, donate that stuff, whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Spring cleaning, you guys, spring cleaning. This ties right into the 5 data breach risk factors that we talk about in my data breaches book and also the data breaches class
Right,
that we
yeah.
teach at Black Hat. The number one data breach risk factor is retention. The more data you have, the more risk you have.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And one of the reasons that we end up storing a lot of data is because we don't delete it. We don't purge it regularly, or we have multiple copies of the same data. I mean, it kills me every time someone sends an email to someone else with a spreadsheet of sensitive information.
Mhm.
You have one copy on your local computer, you have one copy on your email server, you have one copy on the other end, and you end up with multiple copies of the same information as opposed to sharing a link to a centralized
Yeah,
source.
it just propagates out from
It
that point.
propagates, and then it's sitting on your email server where it's like one password away from the next attacker.
Yeah.
So
That's actually the number 2 data breach risk factor is proliferation of data.
that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Yeah. So this year, we are already starting to see a regulatory shift, at least in the United States and possibly beyond, where enforcement is moving beyond breach notification. It's starting to get to those proactive measures, starting to think about what you're collecting. And honestly, while this is a little scary, I think ultimately will help all of us. I don't know about you, but time after time, I see with, for example, our clients here at LMG all the time. Many organizations have built these really very mature security programs
Mhm.
without actually knowing what information you're collecting and where it is.
That comes up in almost every tabletop that I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've really put the cart before the horse because in order to properly secure something, you have to know that you have it. You want to know what you have, where it is, how exactly that needs to be regulated. And so, in an ideal universe, we all want to go back in time 10 or 20 years and figure out what data we have and then say, oh, what regulations do we need to comply with and what frameworks make sense? And then let's build our security programs. obviously we can't do
that
that.
now.
We're going to have to like rebuild the boat while we're going down the river here.
Good analogy.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, but we can do it.
It's
We
doable.
can at least make it better. Like, what do pirates
Yeah.
do?
Well, and that's the hesitation.
Not that pirates go down rivers.
Right. Well, some of them do. But
Okay.
The problem that we run into when we talk about this is that exact problem. Like people have amassed so much data at this point, they don't really know where to start when it comes to cataloging, understanding the risk behind it, understanding how it moves through the organization. It's a tough thing.
It's very daunting.
Yeah.
I feel like you may have gone through something like this recently.
I
Like, how
did.
would you recommend people approach this?
So the approach is basically just pick a place to start.
Yeah.
I mean,
Matt's been going through a cleaning and organizing
yeah,
phase that he's been telling us all about.
Complete house cleanup. It's been annoying everyone in the office lately. But no, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it can be a daunting and overwhelming task to go through that, but you just have to pick a place and just start into it.
And purge.
Yeah.
Start 2026 off right.
Get rid of what you don't need.
Yes.
Yep.
So let's go into our key takeaways. Number 1, in 2026, prioritize data inventory and mapping. The number one thing we all need to be focusing on for 2 reasons. 1, regulation, and 2, our own security. Reduce your risk by reducing your data.
Yeah. The next thing you want to do is reduce that data.
I just said number 2 also.
You just rolled us right into it.
Bum,
Reduce your data to reduce your risk. And you can't do that unless you understand what data you have. That's the big thing there. But the more you get rid of, the lower your risk level is for the data that you're actually working with. It's easier to keep track of. It's easier to understand. And let's face it, guys. I mean, there's a rare chance you're going to need that one email from 15 years ago. So let's start cleaning out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Or you can at least keep it off.
Or archive it or something like that. Yeah.
Number 3, expect that regulators are going to care about data use and data collection, not just breaches. Really, up until now, we have really seen the maturity and the focus be on breach notification. There is now in the United States a data breach notification law in all 50 states. And where did that start?
Go ahead.
California. It started with California. And now we are seeing California introducing the concept of deletion and giving consumers the right to, well, not just consumers, everybody, every individual, the right to have their information deleted if they are a California resident and the right to regulate how information is sold.
Yeah.
So expect to see that idea proliferate around the country.
Yeah.
And possibly beyond.
Ideally beyond. The next thing is make sure that you are creating and actively using, that's the big thing, a data classification policy in your organization. It's a little tough to get started, but once you have it going, if you can just keep it rolling, then it makes everything down the road a lot easier for you. And so establish your policy, make sure it works for the kind of data that you have and how you use it, and then just make sure that it's actually enforced.
Well, and your data classification policy is a foundation of so many other things.
Oh, yeah.
This comes up when we're doing incident response planning, when we're doing tabletop exercises, and all kinds of other proactive security planning.
Artificial intelligence policies.
Yes, that's true as well. What kind of information is okay to upload to artificial intelligence? If a server gets hacked, how do you need to report it? It'll depend on what kind of information is in there.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have 25 different kinds of information. You want to have 3 to 5 different categories. So make sure that you create that simple yet critical data classification policy and you educate people and you actually use it as a foundation for your information security policies.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 5, design. Actually, why don't you take this one?
All right, I'll take this one. So you want to design identity and recovery, basically assuming that your personal data has already been compromised. And this really comes down to a lot of the verifications that we use when we get into things like security by trivia. So what are things about me that are not going to change that people ask me for to verify very frequently?
What's your mother's maiden name?
Mother's maiden name.
What products do you use in your beard?
My date of birth, my last 4 of my social security number. Like those things are probably not, well, the beard stuff changes frequently. That's a different story though. Okay. But no, those are things that are static and are realistically not going to change. And so that from a standpoint of consistency, that sounds great. Like if I ask you what the last 4 of your social is, that's always going to be the same. But the problem is it's always going to be the same. So if it gets stolen, I can't change that. It's all over the place.
Yes.
So yeah, and we've all been through so many data breaches at this point.
Yep.
Like it's all been stolen.
Unfortunately, I can't go back in time and change my first pet's name.
Yeah, can't.
I almost just said it, but it would like unlock everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Train your teams on data handling, not just security tools. A lot of teams get training because vendors provide it on how to use certain security tools or from Microsoft or things like that. But really, again, fundamentally, you need to establish data classification and then data handling policies. And then make sure everyone in your organization, not just IT staff, are aware of how that information should be treated.
Yeah, the big thing is everyone needs to know about this. Not just your IT, not just your security staff. I mean, anyone who handles sensitive data inside of your organization needs to be aware of this and needs to actually understand why we
Yep.
need to be careful about this kind of information.
Exactly.
Yep.
So remember, data is hazardous material. The more information you collect, the more risk you're collecting. And 2026 is the year of data mapping, data inventory, and data reduction.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Please tune in to Cyberside Chats next week and like and subscribe.